Good morning to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Friday, November 15th, 2019. Putting this together in the morning because there's a lot to go over, and I need to start getting ready and finishing up getting ready to head to the Outer Banks of North Carolina for this weekend's very big-time coastal storm that we're going to talk about, high-impact event. I'll get to that in just a moment, but first, it is still hurricane season. And in the Eastern Pacific, we do have a tropical depression, 20E, the E for Eastern Pacific, and weak right now, going to stay weak, probably become a tropical storm. And the remnants of this will head up towards the Baja with some impacts there, but not substantial. Pretty late in the season to be getting tropical activity out this way, but there it is nevertheless. And then another system, 94E, Invest Area 94E, 20% chance of development over the next couple of days, 30%, 3 in 10 shot over the next 5 days for that system there. So fairly active here still in the southeastern Pacific, part of this convectively coupled Kelvin wave, this energy and favorability window of opportunity moving through, giving birth to what will be another tropical storm. And then this other system, nothing though right now seen in the Atlantic Basin. There was some chatter, or whatever you want to call it, in the computer models that maybe something would try to develop in here, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. We still have a couple of weeks left in the hurricane season on the calendar anyway, at least the man-made calendar, so you never know. But things are looking pretty good across the Atlantic Basin for sure. The main focus will be on this coastal storm that's going to develop here and impact a huge portion of the East Coast when all is said and done. Expanding the shot to the global coverage here, again, here's the two systems in the Eastern Pacific. But out in the Westpac, a couple of systems to watch as well. There's a depression that's bringing heavy rainfall to portions of the Philippines, and then a typhoon out to the east of that won't affect any land areas. And then it looks like another typhoon is going to develop somewhere in the vicinity of the Philippines and track that way within the next week or so. So the Western Pacific staying busy as we approach the week leading up to Thanksgiving, for what it's worth. So that part of the world still rather active, showing you that, yep, it is hurricane season, especially still in the northern hemisphere. You'd expect that. And for the Westpac, it can stay busy pretty much year-round, although the peak time for the most activity is usually between, we'll call it April and December, and in the winter months it kind of wanes down a little bit, but stuff can pop up. So we'll keep an eye on things out that way if you have interests out in the Philippines. All right, so satellite imagery here of a good bit of the Western Hemisphere. This is our storm system taking shape that we'll talk about in more detail in a moment. This is the new depression, 20E. This is Invest Area 94E. Strong upper-level winds will inhibit much strengthening with TD 20 there in the Eastern Pacific. And as the Hurricane Center forecast showed, looks like it'll head up towards the Baja. You know what? I wonder if I have this backwards. Let me just go back over here. I hate being wrong. So the depression is sitting over here just south of the Baja. And looking at the satellite imagery, yeah, I mean, I guess it's that one. I was confused. Is it this blob or is it this blob? Just goes to show you kind of how disorganized it is. I bet the center of circulation is displaced a little bit, probably over here, and it's undergoing some shear. Nevertheless, the system is supposed to move up this way towards the Baja and weaken, bringing some moisture to that region, but not a major impact event. So if you have plans to go to the Baja, Cabo San Lucas, and vicinity, don't cancel those plans. It'll be just fine, just something to watch, and it will bring some sensible weather that you can feel, sensible weather impacts. This system definitely going to bring, already is bringing, weather impacts to the southeast. Strong energy in the atmosphere will give birth to a surface low out here over the Atlantic, where water temperatures are still quite warm, so that will help to lead to this combination of the atmosphere working with the ocean and the moisture that's available and the heat energy in the Gulf Stream to create a very potent coastal storm not particularly intense. When I say potent, it's more about the impacts. The big deal from this really is going to be the fact that there's going to be strong high pressure up to the north and then developing low pressure down to the south. And again, as I've talked about in recent days, the gradient, the difference in pressure over distance, will be such that a strong onshore flow and long fetch of wind is really going to pile up the water against portions of the mid-Atlantic states, and particularly the southeast area, and even more particular and specifically eastern North Carolina. Now you notice almost the entire rest of the country here is pretty much free of any major hazards. And so similar to a hurricane coming in, where you only have the impacts along the coast, like if we had a hurricane running up the east coast, all of our focus would be over here. Well, this should be the same type of thing. These winter storms don't get as much attention from the public because they are not officially named by the National Weather Service. I know the Weather Channel does that as part of their branding and marketing, and that might help raise some awareness. There's people that have opinions about that, and that's fine. But winter storms, coastal storms, these hybrid systems, they're not named, and for whatever reason, the general public, I guess, doesn't pay as much attention to something if it's not named. I guess we're just conditioned to that. So that's part of my job, as well as others on Twitter and other social media, Facebook, YouTube, etc., to share what we know and to make sure we raise awareness that people understand there are going to be impacts. And so as we zoom in here, looking at the radar, it's already starting to unfold here across the southeast. Light to moderate rain. There's the I-95 corridor. So, any trucking interest, commercial travel, vacationers, snowbirds heading south, whatever the case may be, it's rainy, and rainy, wet roads become hazardous. So please slow down. That is the case all the way down into Florida. I-10 branches off to the west here, 95 going down to the south. So coastal Georgia, and then of course you get into Highway 17 that runs up through here. Also going to be wet, and then the biggest threat from this, the biggest issues will be in, like I said, eastern North Carolina. We can start to zoom in here. You get an idea. The purples, that is storm warning. So, 50, 60, 65 mile per hour wind, especially in gusts. High wind warning, coastal flood warnings. It's all starting to come together now. And so let's break down what we know. This is a great set of graphics from the National Weather Service out of Morehead City, Newport. And this is their morning briefing. I will put a link to this in the video discussions description today on YouTube if you want to check it out. It's a PDF file. And this is their county warning area. So they're responsible for these counties that you see right here. And so that's what we're going to focus on because that's what the biggest impact area looks to be. So what can we expect? Coastal flooding, wind, marine, the offshore waters, etc., flooding from heavy rain, etc., whatever. I hate that word sometimes. Timing pretty much now through Monday. So the next few days here going to be rather nasty, and the impacts are going to be, significant. Potential for life-threatening inundation just depends on where you are. Very disruptive, widespread power outages possible, storm force winds. We're talking about close to hurricane force, just under that, so between gale and hurricane force wind. So, above 50 miles per hour, maybe above 60 miles per hour, and minor flooding from very heavy rain that'll be fairly persistent, a good soaking rain. And remember, the trees still pretty much have all of their leaves, so the possibility of downed trees could be a big deal. Everything's pretty much in the red for coastal flooding, wind, and marine impacts. Significant. This would be more hurricane, as we saw like with Dorian, for example. But we're getting there. I mean, this is out of 5 categories of these impacts. We're at category 4, if you want to look at it that way. People like to categorize things. Well, there you go. This will be a significant impact event. Flooding and wind, not as bad overall, but, it's going to still be there, especially along the coast. Remember, this is your inland area right here. So wind in the inland area is not too bad, but wind along the coast, yes, that could be significant. So I encourage you to check out this PowerPoint link, well, whatever it is, the PDF file, PowerPoint slides. Again, I'll put a description link for you today. So coastal flooding, this is the biggest issue and the one that I'll focus on the most. All of this area in orange here that I'm highlighting, significant ocean overwash, coastal flooding possible. This is the Alligator River right through here, and those stiff winds coming in, storm surge, it could pile all the water up down on the southern part of where the Alligator River is, and that could push water levels high, 2 to 4 feet above ground level. Certainly with this kind of setup, that is possible. Down south along the Crystal Coast and back in down east North Carolina, mainland Carteret, Craven County, up the Neuse River, New Bern right here, Cedar Island out here, Atlantic, Stacy, Davis, there's a little town out here called Sea Level, Bayboro, Oriental, Minnesota, you name it. And then, of course, the barrier islands out here. Overwash, sound side flooding, the Pamlico Sound, a complex setup for a complex geographic location. Very, very, very different location than like just the east coast of Florida, for example, where you have the ocean and the land interface right there, and it's pretty much straightforward. You think of A1A coming down out of St. Augustine down to Daytona as an example. There's beach and there's ocean. In North Carolina, you have the ocean, the barrier islands, the sounds, the rivers, the creeks, and the bays, and it just gets crazy. So you have to pay attention to this and really know your geographic setup, where you live, and if you're new to the area, you really need to be paying attention to this if you haven't experienced anything like this before. Very similar to a tropical storm or a hurricane, just a little bit colder and a little less windy. But, flooding is flooding, so please take this very seriously. Coastal flood warnings, coastal flood advisories would be expected. Wind, and this has gone up. I mean, we're getting closer to hurricane force here, just, a few miles per hour shy overall, mid to upper 60s for wind gusts, all the way down to Ocracoke. And then inland, little town like Aurora, 40 mile per hour wind, 37 in New Bern. And then North Topsail Beach in the 40s, that's tropical storm force. And that extends fairly far inland. There's I-95 over there. So not much travel issues along I-95, but Highway 64 coming out of Rocky Mount, Highway 17, be mindful, especially if you're a trucker, if you know truckers, high-profile vehicles, let them know, please. Got to be careful. Again, we don't name these storms, but if it was tropical storm so-and-so, everybody would be paying attention. And, well, hopefully everybody. More people would be paying attention. So I'm really trying to bang the drum hard on this because, this is going to be a big-time impact event, no doubt about it. High wind warnings, of course, wind advisory. So you don't get tropical storm warnings in these non-tropical events. You have a high wind warning or a wind advisory. In the offshore waters, it wouldn't surprise me to see hurricane force wind warning for the possibility of hurricane force winds. The wave heights, 20 feet right offshore here of Kill Devil Hills and Kitty Hawk. Now, 20 feet, okay, that's like a 2-story building. 20-foot waves with that long fetch coming in, really going to pile the water up here, and the overwash up there, Kitty Hawk, Kill Devil Hills, Nag's Head, Corolla further north, Duck, all the way down the Outer Banks there. Really, really going to be significant, and it's going to be a multi-day event. Gale and storm warnings for the coastal interest, for marine interest. Hopefully, you don't need Mark to tell you, keep your boat moored and secured for sure. Don't be venturing out into this. The Coast Guard, they don't need to be rescuing you. So, the purple is bad. Just think of that as like red for tropical storm warning. If it was a tropical storm, it would really be a bigger headline event, I think. Rainfall needed. Luckily, some ponding at 8 to 10 down there near Frisco, that's getting it. Almost a foot of rain. Yeek. and that'll put the water. You think about Highway 12 out there. If you live out there, you know that kind of rainfall will flood Highway 12 plus the overwash. Yeah, I'm headed out there. Overall, though, this will help with any drought situation, so that's good. And then they summarize it up here. I encourage you to read this. I will tweet a link to the one that they put out by 6 p.m. Of course, you can follow the Weather Service on all kinds of social media right here, and it is the largest crowdfunded weather in the United States, put it that way. You know, we have our crowdfunding with Patreon, and for those of you that pay taxes, which hopefully is everybody, this is your weather. This is it. This is your weather service, and that's where I get this from. I just interpret it for you. How about farther to the south and west, like where I live, Wilmington, and the Grand Strand? Windy, but the impacts will be less. As an example, we just click on Wilmington, and you get the forecast here through the weekend. Yucky weather. That should just say yucky. So breezy, rain, etc., but not terrible. 21 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour approaching in the Wilmington area. Saturday night, maybe the mid-30s for wind speeds, and the same holds true. And this is just great. If you don't use these products, I really encourage you to do so. You know, you don't need an app, whatever. It's free. Pay for it with your taxes. There you go. Grand Strand area, 26, 31, maybe 30. So around 30 mile per hour wind along the coast here of the Grand Strand. And that's really going to be at the immediate coast. So a couple inches of rain, choppy seas, windy, some water elevation, water level rises, elevated water levels. That's what I'm trying to say. A few scattered power outages probably, but not a real big deal for extreme southeast North Carolina here and northeast South Carolina. Let's say from Wilmington to Myrtle Beach to Georgetown and down to Charleston. Just a yuck kind of weekend. Catch up on Netflix, Disney Plus, watch my documentaries, whatever, but it's going to be eastern North Carolina, down east North Carolina, and I don't want to leave out, didn't talk much about it yet, the Virginia Capes, Virginia Beach, that area as well. Now I can expand upon that a little bit in terms of who's going to see what impacts. Once this storm departs, it's going to form and kind of hang out down here, and it's going to head out to sea. The rest of the mid-Atlantic states up here through the northeast will get in on the wind and the rough seas as that storm heads out to sea. Very large fetch of wind coming across the ocean there. So eventually, yes, this will have impacts going from the Carolinas first all the way up into Atlantic Canada as the system pulls away. So just keep that in mind. Sorry about that rogue arrow there. There we go. So what am I going to do? Well, later today I will head out to the Outer Banks, and my plan will be to set up a camera system along the way in New Bern, right along the river there at Union Point, just like I did for Hurricane Florence. I wish that I could get out here to down east North Carolina, the Carteret County area, but I don't have time. And that's hard to do. Can't be everywhere, and I'm going to be doing this one by myself. So I'm going to set up a camera system in New Bern, and then another system up here along the Outer Banks near the Kill Devil Hills area. And then I'm going to head south. There's Oregon Inlet. I'll probably put a camera system. So let's go highlight New Bern again. So there's 1, 2, and then I'll put another one down here, probably somewhere along the Pea Island National Seashore. Another one in Rodanthe, that's 4, and then finally one probably here near Buxton, that's 5. Live cameras. Those will stream to our HurricaneTrack insiders and our patrons on Patreon, and the Weather Channel will pick those up from time to time. You can watch those on the Weather Channel. Always enjoy working with them. And then I will be staying in Rodanthe at a friend's house, and will do the best I can to report on what's happening, take some handheld video, etc. And I'll also place up to 3 of our GoPro cams. Those don't stream live, they just record up to 36 hours. Remember, we modified our GoPros to record 36 hours with a battery pack and a huge chip, and I'm going to put those out in some really unique locations and try to capture this event from a perspective that would ordinarily be impossible. And then I'll try to do so without me getting sandblasted and staying dry and staying safe. And hopefully my vehicle doesn't get swamped. You never know. I mean, it's going to be rough out there. And Highway 12 down here, especially that portion of it, and I got a feel for the people in Ocracoke dealing with what they dealt with and still dealing with after Dorian. But this highway down here is going to take another beating. Very, very busy storm track over the eons, and this is no different. So there you go. I will be streaming live later this afternoon throughout the entire event from the vehicle. So the vehicle cam will be up 24 hours a day, and that will be publicly available on YouTube. And you may share that and whatever you want. And then, of course, if you are one of our patrons or are one of our HurricaneTrack Insider subscribers, I will be posting a link to our digital dashboard. You can log into our Insider site if you've already signed up for that. And that's where the live cameras will go, just like we do during hurricane season. All right? So focused mainly on this, we'll talk about the rest of lower 48 weather over the weekend. No big storms coming up after this, I don't think. We were kind of looking at the possibility of another one developing next week, and that seems to be off the table. You never know, it might come back. But I will do another update tomorrow morning. It'll be more of a nowcast. Hey, here's what's happening kind of thing. So you folks in eastern North Carolina, brace yourselves, as they say. It is coming. So be ready. All right, that is it from me for now. As always, thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again once I'm on the road.